This is Morten from INKISH, and today I am very pleased to talk to. I can't call you my friend. I think at least we know each other quite well.
I think we
Brendan Perry, right?
Call
We're
each
friends,
other,
right?
I think we can call each other friends, Morten. We've spent some very late nights together.
We did.
Very well behaved. So
yeah. That was actually a good starting point. Thank you very much for pointing that out, Brendan. I asked you a couple of weeks ago for this interview for a couple of reasons, because I think that there are a lot of people in the industry that do a lot of things because they actually have a kind of altruistic kind of approach to the industry, where obviously we need to make money for a living, but we also do it because we have some kind of, let's say, a passion for the industry and have some kind of interest in actually making sure that we bring something good to our members or our viewers, our audiences in different ways. So I'm a little bit curious. So I was thinking that maybe we should talk a little bit, briefly a little bit about who you are, but then I would like to talk about the time before PIA in the UK, because I'm a little bit interested. I believe there must be a reason why you decided to go into forming an organization that seems to be very successful in the UK. So who are you, Brendan?
So I started life desperately wanting to be a photographic journalist. I picked up a camera for the first time when I was about 10 years old. I stole my dad's 35mm Kodak, and we were out on a safari because I grew up in Africa, and he didn't know, and I took some photos of some rhinos, and he didn't know that had happened because I managed to put the camera back down again because he would have killed me. And about 2 weeks later, I heard lots of shouting coming from the living room as my dad reviewed the photos and found that his 9-year-old son had picked them up. But once he'd calmed down, he gave me one of my photos, and I was just captivated by the fact that I'd taken an image. So, sort of long story short, I because of the digital camera boom that kind of ended my dreams of becoming a National Geographic photographer, I segued into being the photographer for the student newspaper at Edinburgh University, and then ended up, as you always do at student newspapers, I ended up doing everything. I was a section editor for 3 years, and that kind of links into my initial love for print, because I used to walk down the floppy disks with the newspaper on, down to the printers. That wasn't very far away, and I remember walking in and it just being this absolutely magical world, and just all these machines, and then seeing these machines turn this digital file into something real. And that's something real, my writing, my photography going out into the world, was just absolutely magical to me. And
sorry to interrupt you. Sorry to interrupt you, but it's kind of interesting because, maybe I bypass a little bit of your introduction, but we will revert. I was just thinking that if you look at some of the issues that we're talking about in the industry today about labor and attracting young people to it, what you just said is so intriguing to me, because my story is almost the same. I also had a disc and a computer and a magazine I needed to get printed, and I got into a printing company, saw things transforming from digital into some paper, tactile experience. Do you think that some of that things that you and I did when we were younger and got into the printing industry, is that basically how we should attract the industry more to young people? Because sometimes it's so distant. It's YouTube. It's digital looks so great today. So because we need to get people interested in this industry, right?
100%. We had 2 Kickstarters that worked for us during the pandemic. It was a government program here in the UK that enabled young people who were at risk of missing out their opportunity because of the pandemic to give them paid for workplaces. So we took on 2.
Oh,
and
nice.
They were both sort of graphic design creatives. And once the pandemic started to lift and we were able to go out to events again with them, they were absolutely blown away when they actually had the same experience. Their digital work that they've created on a computer, actually seeing how that got transformed. And I remember one of them had her mind blown because she had her file with her, and she was at Sign Digital UK here, and she took it over to one of the white guys on the wide format machines and said, "Could you print this for me?" And they did it for her there and then. It took about half an hour to set up and rip, and whatever, and it just absolutely amazed us. So yeah, I agree 100%.
So maybe the biggest challenge for our industry when it comes to attracting younger people and young talent to our industry is basically just show what we do.
I think that's it. The printing charity here does a lot of work in that regard with their Print Futures Awards, and that's something they really try to encourage and get their alumni and the young people in their awards scheme out into the sector, coming to trade shows and so forth, experiencing it. We're working on something similar at the moment at the IPIA, and it's all sort of been spec'd out, and we now are working towards trying to bring that to life next year. But yeah, I agree. It's the only way. You have to get people who've got that artistic or journalistic or creative bent and get them out to see how it happens in real life, because once you see it, it is magical.
Fantastic. So let's revert to to your experience as doing everything at a university school paper, right? Sorry, I was just so carried away because I thought when you spoke about this story, I just realized that it was the exact same way I got into this industry. I think it was very emotional, but I want to hear your story anyway. So sorry for interrupting.
No, that's okay. So I then had a bit of good fortune. I worked at a cafe all the way through university to try and help pay rent. And the Sunday Times of Scotland office happened to be above my cafe. So the editor used to come down, and I was the only one who could make his double espresso exactly how he wanted it. So I saw an opportunity, and I started giving him my copy that I was writing for the newspaper across the desk with his double espresso. And I think I remember him calling me a cheeky bugger or something. The editor engaged with me. He talked to me. I did an internship there for 6 months, over summer, and then actually during university at reduced hours. And at the end of it, he said, "Okay, we'll give you a shot. Come back when you've got your degree, and we'll see where it goes." I ended up joining the investigative journalism division at Sunday Times of Scotland. I was an investigative journalist for nearly a year, which was a very scary, very interesting experience. I did 3 undercover jobs with them, and after that, it was still then that was when the credit crunch hit. So this is 2008 into 2009, and the editor just had to sadly walk out one day and just explain to nearly half of the journalists in the room that they would no longer have a job. So lost my job, and along with a lot of other journalists. And then the UK journalism media scene imploded. Johnston Press closed 300 titles. There was 3,000 unemployed journalists within a week. So I called back my old editor and I said, "What am I going to do? This is my dream. I want to be a journalist. I want to get into this world." So I went and did a postgrad in multimedia journalism, which is where I learned all about video. And I heard a lecture from Reed Business Communications about business-to-business journalism. And suddenly my eyes opened to the world of business-to-business journalism. I wanted to start a family, so there was a transitionary period where I was freelancing. But the first place that I got a job as a editor was at Link Publishing, which owns Print Monthly and Silent magazines. Edited there for 8 years, and then did a year's horrendous, scary stuff in international marketing, and then joined the IPA. So that's me.
Fantastic story, and I think it's great to get that understanding of how you got there. So you mentioned your kids when you were unplugged, kind of thing. So you have family. Where in the UK do you live now?
So I live in Bristol, which is the southwest of the UK. I've got 3 kids, and all under 10, which makes my life,
so you're busy.
which makes my life really interesting. And yeah, it's just a continuous juggling act between work and kids and clubs and everything else.
One of the things I always, I'm a little bit jealous on you and people in English speaking countries is because, first of all, you have English as your native language, which basically means that you can communicate with the whole world more or less, right? Another thing that I also think gives you an opportunity is the fact that what you do can potentially have a wider audience than if you speak Danish, for example, right? And I was just thinking that when I look at what you do with the IPIA and also with some of the other organizations in the UK, it still seems a little bit like that, even though the world could be under your feet for whatever you do, it still seems like you're a little bit focused on the UK. What is the situation in the UK market? Is it a thriving market? Is it a declining market or a stable market? If you look at the printing industry, and I will come back to why I'm asking this in a second, but I'm just curious about the market situation from your perspective in the UK right now.
Yeah, so I think it's something that really saddens me, because before the pandemic, I know it's really boring, but unfortunately that is just the answer. Before the pandemic, the industry had finally found a new level of sustained growth. So it had found stability. The middle sort of B2 market had stabilized. A lot of those guys had turned into, and girls had turned into, semi-trade printers, doing work for much smaller printers who turned themselves into semi-print management, marketing agencies. It was stabilized. The digital bubble, at least in the UK, really had burst. A lot of people, a lot of marketing agencies, small businesses, franchises, chains, hospitality venues, events, etc., were coming back to print because all the digital things just didn't work. I mean, even in our local leisure centre chain, I remember at one stage they had videos up on all the walls and the screens, and then slowly, one by one would break, and then they wouldn't replace it, and then eventually, after a year, they went back to posters. What then happened? I think we were growing at a steady rate overall, about 2% a year. But then the pandemic hit. So
just to understand, so before the pandemic, it was basically a market where you saw, even, let's say, some of the, more fragile segments of the industry, you still saw an overall growth in the UK market. First of all, because of the digital transformation changed the companies to be either like, let's say, trade printers, and then the smaller printing companies became like very local service providers, helping people with the design, with the communication, with what technologies they should use for. Is that correctly understood?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'll give you just a really tangible example. We've got Prontoprint fish ponds near us, which is a 3-4 person company. They're a member of our sister association, the BAPC. And they do, the majority of their work is working for other local or regional businesses who've lost all ability for in-house design. They don't know anything about print anymore. And so they outsource all of that to Prontoprint. And what Prontoprint do is, if it's a super short term, they've got machines there, of course, digital.
Yeah, so they can do digital print in-house, and then they have a network that they can do if it's larger print runs or capabilities that they can't do for themselves, right?
Yeah, anything that's not a really straightforward standard job that can be turned around in 4 or 5 hours digitally, they will outsource, basically. I think they've got 2 or 3 little specialisms they do themselves in-house, but 90% is outsourced. And then delivered white label back to the customer, or delivered white label to them for quality control, and then they push it on to the customer. But essentially, they're a marketing agency. So pandemic comes, and the UK was hit really hard. I don't want to get into all the politics and everything else, but the kind of delays in whether we lock down or not lock down and what we do there, that was really damaging, because it hurt a huge amount of confidence, but there was no support. Then there was the successive lockdowns, and then we were fighting really hard with the government and the Department for Business, Energy, Industrial Strategy for support, having daily phone calls with them. And eventually then the support started to come through. But by that point, we were begging printers around the industry, don't close down, help's coming, don't just shut up the shop, don't give up the goat, we're going to get help. But for a lot of businesses, even that 3 or 4 months of limbo was too much. Yeah.
And when you say we, is that the industry, or is that what IPIA did for your members, or?
That's what IPIA did directly for our members. There were other trade associations, BPIF, PICON, and a lot of the other trade associations that work within a GPMA, which is the Graphic Print Media Alliance here in the UK. But we did a lot of direct work with government to campaign and explain that we were seeing the rapid demise of our sector because there was this limbo.
How was that for you personally? It must, because you work your way into an organization. You are very visual in your organization, and I think that taking that on your shoulders and try to see if you can help members is, of course, it is for the better good. But it's also, it must be it must be hard work. It must also be with some uncertainty because you never really know whether you get the support you need, right?
It was really difficult. I was someone that never worked at home. I only ever worked in the office. I was really disciplined about that. So the idea of having to work from home was really difficult. Trying to make that transition, and then there's no barrier between home and life. But I really felt, in this position, when you become general manager of a trade association, we have our chair and our council, who are the political wing. But that's our job. We are here to defend and support the industry, not just our members, the whole sector. Yeah. And when things like this happen, trade associations are the umbrella that opens when it rains. We are the ones with connections with government. We are the ones with that insight and that wide knowledge of the whole sector. And if we don't do it, who can?
Yeah, that's definitely
it's
true,
our responsibility. Yeah. So I think it's like any job you do that involves that. You hope that you don't have to work at that level, but I did. And the rest of the team around me did, and our council, and our chair at the time, Graham Smith. At the time, it was our vice chair, Charles Rogers, our president, Mike Roberts. We all really just pulled together with our council to fight really hard. We did get support for the industry. So we had something called the furlough scheme.
Yeah. Because basically you managed to get that furloughs, which was like, paying people for not working, basically, to be sure that you didn't create an unhealthy competition in the market, right?
Yeah. So when they first rolled out that scheme, you had to, I can't quite remember anymore, but you had to basically choose an employee and say, right, this person's off for 3 months. Yeah. And we immediately went on the offensive with that and explained that's so damaging for print businesses that are trying to run. Because 100%. This week, with the demand at the time being so all over the place, this week they need a litho operator. Next week they need a specialist guillotine operator. Next week they need someone who knows how to run the Irides. And the idea of having to choose a member of staff in a print industry, industrial environment, say, oh, you're gone for 3 months. Sorry, you can't come back, was crazy. Yeah. So that was a big success we had directly, where we campaigned and got that changed. And they introduced the flexible furlough scheme.
Fantastic.
They took that out to other industry working groups when we were campaigning on it, and everyone came back to them in other industries and said, yeah, they're right. This you have to change. And then it became down to almost a day. So you could literally say, right, this week, this member of staff has been off Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and you'd pay them furlough for those 3 days, and then you'd have to pay them for the other 2 or whatever. So things like that really worked. But, the overall sort of, once the tide had gone out, the damage was significant. The average loss in the UK for print businesses was 60% of their revenue. It was really, really seismic. Although all those support schemes helped put a lot of people on life support and give them a way to get through, there was C-bills loans, there was so many different things that came in to try and help. But now, once it's finished, we're seeing the tide's gone out and the real damage, because now it's really sad, but every week now there is another 1 or 2 names that are going under because they just can't bridge the gap anymore. They've got high utilities, increased paper costs through the roof, consumables costs, all their debt from COVID. And they just can't make ends meet anymore. No matter how good they are on paper today, they're not making enough money to pay off all that legacy.
Is that a new challenge that you as an organization then take on? Because it's the same here in Denmark. I have not heard that it is so much with the printing industry in particular, but especially restaurants and, these kind of businesses that were like depending on having people sitting out for dinners at bars and things like that. They have difficulties. So you see a lot of bankruptcies in this segment. I have not heard so much about it in the printing industry, but is that something where you're now trying to use your political influence to see whether you can get even more help, maybe extending the debt, or maybe even eliminating the debt from COVID, or how is that progressing for you?
So we actually managed to have something of a significant breakthrough. So our chairman, Charles Rogers, was invited to attend a meeting at number 10 Downing Street, where he met with a special advisor, a senior special advisor to the Prime Minister, and presented him with a briefing document we had of strategic and structural suggestions to help the print industry. So short-term structural suggestions. We need to be included in this, and this scheme that we're not currently in to help. We need tax relief, we need capital allowance relief, etc. So we need subsidies and assistance on paper pricing. And then wider strategic suggestions about selling the print industry to the nation as a bastion, a cultural bastion of the UK, about its place within culture, within mental health, within healthcare, that every other industry in our land across the world relies on print. That meeting went well, and we were then invited back. We were invited to create an industry roundtable. So we took a series of delegates from our membership, and also there was a delegation from the paper industry. So there's about 20 people in total who we all went down to number 10 Downing Street, and we met with a special advisor and spoke to him for 2 hours, and discussed the real story about our sector, about its innovation, about its sustainability index, and how we really tried to sell the case about how we could be a really good news story for UK manufacturing and reboosting UK manufacturing. That meeting went well, and we are now in the next stages of actually taking that policy document that we created and moving it forward to actually create a structural program. So we're now in the foothills of the next stage, but yeah.
See, when I asked for an interview with you, and also as we disclosed in the beginning, I wanted to understand the value of IPA, and basically this is like one example that is like really where you have the, let's say, more people working together in a group gives you the empowerment to basically do good for a segment of the industry. Maybe a provocative question, but if you are in, let's say, as I said in the beginning, you are in one language, you are in a relatively well-defined space. I know United Kingdom is considerably bigger than Denmark, but it's still, it's not as big as the US, for example, right? Why so many organizations and federations handling this? I would have thought that it might be even stronger if you were just like one voice.
Well, I mentioned it earlier, the Graphic Print Media Alliance was initially founded with that specific purpose in mind. And
so
one
that
of the
was
key
meant as being like a lobbying kind of thing, and then basically you could have sub-segments that are like IPIA and BPIF and etc. Or
well, less lobbying, more a unified umbrella where once, I think 4 times a year, we can come together and all of the associations can talk about their projects, what they're doing, without any tribalism. It's, look, this is what we're doing, this is the advances we're having, this is the success we're having, this is the difficulties we're seeing in the sector, and share all that information together and see where there are synergies, where we can work together to help each other. And for example,
so there is this kind of collaboration across the different organizations. You have that through the
GPMA. Yeah, Graphic Media Alliance. Yeah,
precisely. Yeah. You got it.
Now,
so you have that kind of thing.
Yeah, on paper, a lot of people might think that the British Print Industries Federation, the BPIF, technically would be a competitor to us because it's a very similar-ish type organization. They're bigger than we are. They're a lot older than we are. So you might think there was tribalism or stuff on the face of it. But when we had this opportunity to go to number 10, I won't bore you with all the detail now because that would take an hour as to how that managed to happen. But the BPF were incredibly supportive in helping some of the members that went to that roundtable discussion with data, analysis, industry information, really in-depth stuff that we don't necessarily have because we're a different type of organization, and they were very supportive and helpful in that.
Fantastic.
So is there room for more collaboration? 100%. But I would say from where we were 10 years ago, where the associations were so tribal, they probably wouldn't have been even maybe in the same room together, to now having an organization that unifies us and where we are actually collaborating together specifically on 5 or 6 different projects at any one time to help each other. We've come a long way. We've come a really long way.
I think that's very good and very positive, of course. And the reason I'm also asking is because sometimes when I talk to your members and I also talk to the British industry, you seem to be the more agile, the more fun, you seem to be an organization that also, I would say that you have probably also upgraded the last, let's say, 5-6 years. A lot of more public activities and also fun activities. And I think you as a person is also very good at, I said, let's walk into people and make them talk and communicate and do this kind of thing. Is that part of the strategy of making the IPIA essential part of the British industry?
Yes, it is, because one of the most important things that we need to do, as we went right back to the start of this conversation about that young person walking into a print business.
Mm-hmm. You and me.
We need the UK nation, everyone, to fully understand and recognize the place of print within our culture. Mm-hmm. And it was missed for too long. We were such a dominant sector. It was like turning on the lights or opening the tap and getting water out. Okay, that's how ubiquitous print was. And the idea that it needed help or that our industry needed recognition was like, it's like breathing air. Why do we need to recognize you? But that was then and this is now. And we really need to reestablish fundamentally from the youngest child upwards about the culturally important place of print, its importance within our society, our economy, and get that into the consciousness of the nation and do that wider, not just the UK. That needs to happen across the globe, but it does happen in some sectors. Italy is very good. Italy is very good. Germany is very good. They have a much greater understanding of the importance of print. So yeah, it is a conscious decision to be like that.
What I like about what you're saying is also, because I think that when it comes to let's say the thing that you spoke about with Downing Street number 10 and the furloughs and all those kind of things, I think that people realize that's what you do. But when they see you now, a couple of years after the pandemic, it is your magazine, it is the Breakfast Club, it is a lot of member-driven activities. And now you also talk about the responsibility towards younger generations and the future of our industry. So I think that it's important to understand that when you look at your work and as an organization, you have different, let's say, pillars that are important. You have the legislation and the financial and let's say the structural kind of thing as important. Then you have the current members and their not well-behaving, but well-being right now. And then you also have this outlook for the future of the industry. So that is, it seems like an agenda that is both. None of these are probably very easy, right? All of them requires quite a lot of work, capital, engagement from all the stakeholders, basically.
Yeah, it does, and it's the reality is nothing's easy. But I think fundamentally for us is it comes down to running the IPA as a proper trade association. So, trade association is owned by its members. We're not owned by a board. We are an unincorporated not-for-profit. Go to your members, talk to them, every single one of them. Ask them, what are the challenges you're facing? What help do you need? What do you think we should do? Our members then elect a council out of the membership, and we have subcommittees for each different part of our activities, and the council drive those initiatives. So everything the IPA does comes, obviously, the executive branch, me and my colleagues, have good ideas that we take back and so forth. But most of the stuff that we do comes out of the membership. The idea for the big breakfast, the original idea for that came from our now vice chair, Alistair Brown from Abbott Print, who had seen something similar in the pharmaceutical industry that his wife worked in, and said, we really need to do this for the print industry. He brought it to the table, it went through our council, and then it got launched. So I think the reason that, and I'm really happy you say that, and thank you very much, that the perception of us being agile, the perception of the IPA having very relevant things to say and products that we've put out and events, the reason they're relevant is because it comes from the base. It comes from the coal face of our sector saying, this is what we want and this is why we want it. If you then take that as your information to produce something, then it can only be relevant because the industry's asking for it. So that's our drive anyway.
Speaking about members, because when I have attended a few times the Breakfast Club, it's a combination of PSPs and converters, but it's also vendors, OEMs, agents, let's say industry people. When I see your magazine, it's, of course, you have stories about both awards and designs, and even, I think there was even an article about fonts, as far as I remember. And I was just thinking that, but it is also a lot of information that is like something that you might see more in, let's say, traditional trade media kind of thing. Where do you see the balance between the members and when it becomes like commercial messaging, which I understand fully why you have to do, also because that is part of the scope, of course, but the balance between what types of memberships you have?
Yeah, so the way that our magazine works is that every member of the association can send us news, PR, content, and we run it in the magazine. We also put it online, we put it out on social media. And to be very honest with you, I really wish we could encourage more of our print business members to send us information, to give us that content, to tell us what they're doing. Because the necessity of having a benefit, and the magazine is a benefit, to say, if you send us a piece of news, up to a limit, we will publish that news for you in the magazine, and the magazine then goes out to your target market. The magazine goes out to a mix of about a third of the audience for the magazine are print buyers of one shape or another. So marketing agencies, brand managers, etc.
So you also put it to non-members, but members that benefit, or readers that benefit from understanding your the offerings and the industry that IPIA represents. So that is basically to drive more business into your industry, right?
Yes, exactly. So that's why the title is Innovation in Print Media and Marketing. So a hard line is that at least a third of the readership must be people outside of our sector that we need to convince and keep showcasing what our sector can do and the technology and everything. So that's actually the drive of it. And then probably the next out of the next 2/3, half of that is print service providers of one shape or form or another. And then the rest is split between the whole rest of the supply chain for the sector. But yeah,
so that's why I get a copy, for example.
Yes, exactly. So we send it to influencers, media hubs, so forth. But I really wish that we could convince more print businesses to go on the record and share their stories. In fact, the most coverage of print businesses we get is case studies. It's where a supplier or a technology provider has managed to convince a customer to tell their story and explain. But it's also then anchored only in that supplier's technology and not the wider picture often.
And that is sometimes what you need. And that, I mean, I tell you, that is what we do from INKISH side, is that when we do films from customers, we almost always do two films. So it's like, we call it perspective, which is a little bit longer edit for INKISH, where we have like not vendor specific, but more like in context. And then we make a testimonial, which is specific to the sponsor. So that is how we have done it for 10 years next year. So it's quite interesting.
It's so amazing that how you see different organizations evolve in parallel, because one of the membership benefit services we offer to our members is also video work in the UK. And it's so funny you say that, because I do exactly the same thing. And we go in and we create one video for the customer, for the printer, that actually we give to them, because, you know, the OEM or the supplier or the sponsor is paying for that video to be produced. And we give that video to them at no other cost, because we want them to be able to showcase themselves. And then we publicize that printer-only content, but then we also have the testimonial as well, just for the OEM and sponsor for them to use. Fascinating.
Fantastic, yeah. Brendan, as exciting as it is talking to you, it is running a little bit on 40 minutes now. So, but I have one question I would really like to talk to you about, and that is the future of, I mean, because sometimes some of the federations, let's say I know some of the federations, it can be in America, Europe, it doesn't matter, maybe even in the UK, but some of them is sometimes having difficulties justifying the member fees. So they're sometimes trying to, okay, what can we do in order to make sure, because I think that being organized is very important. Are you, I mean, I guess you are, but what kind of considerations do you have to make sure that IPIA keeps innovating and being relevant for your members in the nearby future? So one of our key subcommittees that looks after that is our membership subcommittee, and it's chaired by Sarah Kilcoyne-Guillaume, who is the Deputy General Manager of Kingsbury Press, part of Route 1 print group here in the UK. Yeah. And their job is to continuously scrutinize our member benefits as members and push the executive and the rest of the council to say, is this good enough? Are we doing the right things? Is this the right so that is like your internal kind of watchdog.
Yes, it's like an internal continuous auditing system where if we feel that a benefit is no longer relevant, we then will go out to a focus group of, say, 10 members and ask their opinions. And if it comes back that the majority of them say, yeah, we never use it and we don't think it's relevant, it gets cut. And then what do you think we should replace it with? And it's an evolving continuous process. So that sounds like that you have, I mean, to recap kind of thing is like, we spoke about the pillars that are identified as important for IPIA. Your day-to-day communication and engagement with the members is, of course, both keeping them close to you, but also informed about all the services and options you get as a member, and then the future of the industry, and then of course the relevance of the future is also something that you take care of. I think that sounds like how an organization should be doing your things in order to make sure that your members understand that you continue work on being relevant and also valuable for them. So, well, I'm sure we could talk a lot more, but I really appreciate your time here, and thank you very much for, spending Thursday morning here with me. It was I learned a lot, so I hope you like it too. And if you have something you want to add to here in the last minute, feel free. Otherwise, I just want to thank you very much. No, I think, do you know what, the only thing that I always like to leave when people such as your good self, industry influencers, interview me is, one of my key things is really wanting our industry to, sorry, I'm just looking down at my phone because I want to read something to you. Is I'm really keen for our industry to re-find its confidence, its passion, and tying back into what makes our industry great, why people should feel proud to be part of our industry. So I just want to read you something. So this is from Beatrice Ward, and this is what she wrote. This is a printing office, crossroads of civilization, refuge of all the arts against the ravages of time, armory of fearless truth against whispering rumor, incessant trumpet of trade. From this place words may fly abroad, not to perish on waves of sound, not to vary with the writer's hand, but fixed in time, having been verified by proof. Friend, you stand on sacred ground. This is a printing office. Damn it, that is great.
I really like that. Thank you very much, Brenton. And again, one more time, thank you very much for your time here on INKISH. I appreciate our friendship. I appreciate your time here, and I hope to see you soon in person.
Pleasure. Thank you, Morten. Thank you for the opportunity.